There are simple examples of metacognition that I'm sure many of us instinctively use as part of our studying, even if we don't know the fancy label for it. To help us learn more, I'm delighted to be joined today by metacognition specialist, the author and speaker, Nathan Burns. In terms of kind of reflecting on exams, I think it's a really good thing to talk about. If you wanted to become a little bit more robust, a bit more formalised about kind of your post-exam reflections, whether that's a kind of a formal exam you've sat at your school or college, or whether that's, just a practice paper you were taking at home by yourself, the exam wrapper strategy has become quite popular since you and I were at school. I think that's sort of a newer idea that's really had a lot of traction recently. So that's something a lot of teachers will use with their students now. I think it's also a tool the student can use on their own as well. So if we're not familiar with an exam wrapper, tell us about what that is and how we use it.
Yeah, absolutely. So an exam wrapper is an opportunity to reflect more in depth with regards to each question, as opposed to almost sort of, right, I've done an assignment, I scored 17 out of 20. Okay, good, I'm happy with it. It's passed the vibe check, let me move on. What we'd want to do with an exam wrapper is take a more detailed evaluation of each question. And the way this works varies, and often you will be limited by the context. So I would argue that the very best way to do an exam wrapper is instantly after the exam or the mock has been done, because again, it allows for that calibration of how well you think you've done in the moment versus the score you end up getting from the teacher or from the tutor once it's been marked. However, obviously, if you're in a context where you're not doing an exam wrapper instantly afterwards, it can still be really, really helpful. So again, taking the time after an exam, I think even just to begin with, to record down your thoughts, it can be quite messy. There was one teacher I worked with recently who did something like this, where all of her students would come out of the exam. She'd give them all an A3 piece of paper, and she would just say, right, write down everything you're feeling. How, emotionally, how are you feeling? Which questions did you like? Which question? Almost sort of like brain dump down all of your feelings and emotions and thoughts and feedback on that paper in the moment as soon as possible. And I think that's probably the key thing with an exam wrapper, doing it as in the moment as possible. So if you get the exam paper, you sit the exam, you get the exam paper back maybe 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later, a lot of time has gone since then and you'll have forgotten maybe how you felt when you were writing a particular answer, or you maybe will gloss over. It's human nature to gloss over, oh, that's a little bit lower than I thought, but that's fine. We can gloss over some of those things. It's how we work. So I think the more immediate you can react to the exam when you walk out, writing down how you feel, the questions you thought you struggled on. It doesn't need to follow a specific template, but your own reflections once you've walked out of that exam, and then compare them back to the exam once it's been marked by that expert other, is an incredibly powerful tool and something that you can do 5 minutes after each exam. Doesn't require any prep, doesn't require sort of any follow-up or great expertise. It is just your thoughts and feelings put down that you can then reflect on later versus the marked paper.
Phenomenal. Well, look, Nathan, thank you so much for today's conversation, and we look forward to talking again soon.
Amazing. Thank you for having me.